If you want to make a movie in the traditional way, meaning it's always going to be the same movie every single time you watch it, that's absolutely fine. But I think what's happening is that we're going to open up a new medium that offers the possibility of consuming content in a different way. And so the director of a movie could literally code what happens at minute 30 of the movie. So when you watch it and I watch it, we could have slightly different experiences. Do you know the movie called Memento? Imagine you watch Memento the second time and maybe you view it from the point of view of the villain in the movie is. But Christopher Nolan didn't have to film that. He just says, now it's from that perspective and it gets generated for you. The cool thing is that it is actually up to the director to decide how much freedom to give to the viewer about changing what the movie or the TV show does and shows you. When they do like a remaster of Rocky, for example, they could totally code it in Reactor such that it's the same movie throughout, but the last part, they would literally ask you like, okay, what should happen now?
Alberto, if a stranger sat down next to you on a flight and asked you what you're building, how do you describe it in one sentence?
I would say that I am building the backbone of the next generation and wave of AI, which are real-time, interactive, pixel-generated worlds. That's how I would describe it in one sentence. Of course, that doesn't capture all of what that is, but if I have to do it in one sentence, that's what I would say.
The reason I wanted to start there, right, is because you and I have been working together now for some time, and the more I learn about the product, the more I understand what you're doing, the more I'm fascinated by this new world and what this new world is going to look like. We've grown up listening to stories and watching movies, watching series, watching cartoons. It's all about storytelling. And from what I understand, you're building something that's going to be a paradigm shift between movies. It's not movies, it's not gaming. It's very interesting. And I just want to really dive into this. So if I'm a movie lover and Reactor is coming into the market, how does this change one of my hobbies?
I love that question. So the first thing to think about here is that in general, when technologies change dramatically, we try and apply what we knew from the old media and formats to the new ones. For example, when television came out, they put radio on television. And then when the internet came out, they put TV on the internet. And only subsequently, and by the way, I'm not going to take credit for this. This is my co-founder's Bryce's way of explaining things, this specific part. So I want to credit him, which I think is an excellent way of explaining it. Only in time did people figure out what is the actual way of using a new medium. Basically, what is the new unlock that this new medium offers? So for the internet, for example, it wasn't TV on the internet. It was podcasts. It was live streams, right? It wasn't exactly TV the way that we knew it. It was different things, social applications. And so in the same vein, there is a tendency with real-time video AI generation to try and fit things like videos, images, games, as we know them on that. It can do that. The technology can support that, and it will. It already does that today. However, I think that the most exciting part about it all is what is the net new that it unlocks. For example, in the case that you just said, I think it's very exciting to consider how, right now, movies, videos, streaming platforms are very static. I watch the movie, it's always the same every single time, but people have already experimented with making this not be so. So probably, maybe you've heard of something called Bandersnatch, which is a experimental TV episode for Black Mirror that Netflix did, where you could choose how the adventure developed. Like, it was very lightweight interaction. People absolutely love that. Everybody knows that, but they stopped production because think about this. If you make something like Bandersnatch, you're actually filming like 5 movies or something, because for every direction that the story can take, you actually have to sit down and film that section, even though this experience, you watch it once. So the return on investment is not that great, although people love that experience. So something like real-time video suddenly unlocks this and more, because the marginal cost of making a variant of the content is very low compared to having to go out and film more of it. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't film something. You're still going to make a movie, you're still going to film it, you're still going to make an animated movie, but all of a sudden you can take that content and multiply it and change it per viewer, per session, per time of the day. I always like to use the example of, say, I absolutely adore Shrek, the movie, my favorite movie ever. And I must have seen it an embarrassing amount of times. With this technology, literally, when I watch it on my birthday, for example, Shrek could turn around and say something to the effect of like, happy birthday or something. And then the movie continues just as it did before. But with real-time video generation, you can change what's on screen instantaneously and adapt it to who's watching and when they're watching and where they're watching from, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to change entirely how we consume media and how we interact with it. I hope that was what you were looking for in terms of an answer, I guess, to that.
You know, a lot of AI today is all about wait and see. And I think part of what you're describing is continuous. That's the feeling I'm getting. And the reason I say this is I think about how my life has evolved over the years. I'm 38, but the first console I played with was a Sega. And then it went on to a PlayStation and played with Xbox a little bit, but realized it wasn't for me. Went back to PlayStation and grew up in that arcade era as well. And when I think about movies, I originally was renting from Blockbuster. It was taping a series in case you miss it, and things have changed. And now we've come to this world where optionality is immense. You have Netflix, you have Paramount, you have all these different streaming platforms. I'm still a movie lover. I go to the cinema and I feel like it's becoming less of a medium. There's less and less people going there. Do you feel like the world has shifted? Do you feel like the way that we consume entertainment in general, whether it's gaming or whether it's moving, is shifting, and what you're building, is it kind of preparing for that shift?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think definitely, you know, there's been an evolution from how we actually acquire the media to how we consume it. In a way, I think that what we're building is almost like the natural evolution of all of this, because you went from, I had to rent a physical media like DVD or cassette or whatever, take it home, watch it, bring it back, to actually the data for that is stored in software somewhere. And I just receive the data in and out. When I'm streaming, I'm just receiving bytes. They're the same bytes that would be on the DVD or the cassette, right? But they're just delivered differently. So I think that the next frontier is going to be that these bytes, this information about the movie, is not necessarily stored in the same way, but it is going to be more and more generated on the fly and adapted. And so in terms of shift, I truly think that it will not affect existing media or existing ways of expressing oneself. Like if you want to make a movie in the, let's call it the traditional way, meaning that after it's made, it's always going to be the same movie every single time you watch it, that's absolutely fine. And I think that will continue to be an amazing medium. But I think what's happening with what we're building is that we're going to open up a new medium that offers the possibility of consuming content in a different way, in a way that opens up new ways of expressing whatever you want to present to your audience, because it becomes more interactive and more personal even to the viewer. And so the director of a movie could literally code what happens at minute 30 of the movie. So when you watch it and I watch it, we could have slightly different experiences. Or maybe you watch it again a second time and it is slightly different, just slightly. Do you know the movie called Memento? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine a movie like that where, you know, it changes a little bit depending on when you, like, there are so many things in Memento that I would love to know, right? That I don't know from the movie itself. And I think that directors like Christopher Nolan would have a blast thinking about, how do I make the experience of watching this different the second time or the third time? Because I know that you've watched the first time. So like, imagine you watch Memento the second time and maybe you view it from the point of view of, I don't remember what the name of the guy who was like the villain in the movie is, but like maybe you watch it from his perspective that time. But Christopher Nolan didn't have to film that, right? He just says, now it's from that perspective and it gets generated for you. So there is a lot of cool things you can do with the medium.
I think it's interesting. The way you're describing it is as if directors become programmers. And
yeah,
one thing that we're noticing is this new world of everyone is a coder, everyone could become a programmer, vibe coding, marketers are now writing code. Is it so much about the ability to program the outcome? Is it the ability to expand how we think about storytelling? My favorite movie of all time is Rocky. the first Rocky.
I agree. It's a great movie. Great movie.
I think about the ending, and I think, I really hope he just got up and he won. With what you're building, can you do that? Can you become
Yes.
somebody who?
You
Okay.
absolutely can. And the cool thing is that it is actually up to the director, in the case of a movie, to decide how much freedom to give to the viewer about changing what the movie or the TV show does and shows you. So when they do like a remaster of Rocky, for example, they could totally code it in Reactor such that it's the same movie throughout. Literally nothing changes. But the last part, they would literally ask you, like, okay, what should happen now? Or more like you watch it the second time, and maybe the first time around he doesn't get up, and the second time he does, right? Or something like that. Or maybe if you watch the movie enough times, they make it funny. So if you watch it 10 times, the 10 times he does get up, right? You can do crazy stuff like that. So absolutely. And I think in general, though, that also speaks to the effect of like what other things the software enables that is outside the movies and games sphere. The moment that you can program pixels and put them on screen in an easier way, in a way that is actually faster and more human friendly, it opens up possibilities that we didn't have before.
I'm assuming you've thought about all the different challenges that come along, but let's say I'm watching a movie and I have the ability to manipulate how the storyline unfolds. What about authorship? What happens to authorship?
One of the reasons that I am much more attracted to the idea of real-time Gen AI than, let's call it, passive, non-real-time Gen AI is that not always, but sometimes passive Gen AI puts the artistic part of producing art out of the equation, because you could just batch produce a bunch of videos and images, and you just give a prompt and it makes 100 versions of it, which is useful, don't get me wrong, and I can see why that people do that, but it kind of removes the human act of creation a little bit out of the equation. Whereas real time is inherently interactive, right? I actually am encouraged to interact with this new medium and touch it and feel it and try and change it and kind of reshape it. In that world, actually, artists, people who produce content are encouraged to help the creation and make it happen, because the experience is inherently interactive. And so whether you are at the receiving end of somebody that made that experience for you using Reactor, you will be interacting with it for the most part. So you're not just sitting down, scrolling through Instagram or something like that. You're most likely engaging with the experience, which philosophically speaking, I love video games. I think the video games are great because you're actively engaged. Like it actually makes you really think about what you're doing and develops your brain and everything. But also in the act of creation, you have to think about very actively what's going to happen and when, like almost like a game developer. Although I really don't want to pigeonhole this technology into games and movies, because really it's way more than that. But the analogies are great to explain to people what it's like today. I mean, like for where we're at. And so in both cases, whether you're making or consuming, you are really involved in the creation. And so I don't see a future where with this technology, makers and artists are not part of the equation actively, and also the consumers are just mindlessly being pushed content on them, because it literally, on both ends, it really enforces almost interaction and activity instead of passivity. I feel really good working on this, basically, because I know that it's actually a net new product. It's not replacing anything that exists today. So it's going to enable more people to make, if anything.
Obviously, we spoke about gaming and movies, and as you said, that's just one aspect of it. But the other thing that I'm just thinking about as you're talking is education. I think the way the education system is now, you're given some assignments, you're given a homework, you go home, and you can't seem to really enjoy that practice. At least most kids do not find themselves enjoying doing homework or doing these assignments or coursework. But you can find the same person sitting there for 5 hours playing Grand Theft Auto or any other game. And maybe because there's some element of gratification, or you pass a level, you get to the next level, and you can see yourself developing with this technology. And I just want to really push the boundaries here and think about whether there's multiple different areas and sectors that we can tap into with this technology that could potentially enhance our cognitive function. As humans, we're very, very much adaptable, and creativity is a form of amazing. I mean, what we're doing right now with podcasting is an ability to have a conversation that will interest people in listening and watching. If we think about education, is there a world where, because of how we've seen gaming is a great space and kids like to play games because of all the challenges that comes within, as you said, cognitively it's a great form of improving our abilities. With this technology, is there a way for us to utilize it to help the education system to perhaps become more attractive?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yes, on many levels. I think there are different integration levels that we can think about how to integrate Reactor and like technologies into education. At the most immediate level, simply seeing live a topic that you're learning about, because this technology enables you to literally put on screen any pixel you want in real time based on a prompt or an image or other types of input, even voice, for example, right? So imagine that you are learning about dinosaurs or about ancient Rome. Imagination is a very powerful thing. I think it's important to not substitute imagination. However, it is also important to ground things so that you can imagine further. And so this technology would enable you to literally even talk to Caesar live as you're learning. And Caesar would talk to you back knowing what you're learning about at that moment and tailor it for you, for example. Or you're learning about dinosaurs and you would, as you're learning about and you're reading about dinosaurs, then right on screen, right then and there, that specific dinosaurs appears and there are graphics that show you information about the dinosaur. And you can step into the world like Jurassic Park and go around, the dinosaur and stuff. So I think that there is that, and that's definitely going to happen. It's a guarantee at this point. Think about, and why am I saying this? Think about how even Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, and others, they're pushing for education to be like a table stakes feature of their models, of the chatbots that they have. But oftentimes they struggle to convey the content through text only. Humans, for better or worse, are built for visual input, not text or data input. Like we have so much more bandwidth in the eyes than in the ears and in like tactile information. And so if you put pixels on screen, that's a much faster way of conveying information into my brain than if I have to read it. Is it better or not? It depends on the situation, of course, but oftentimes it tends to be better and faster. They've already started experimenting with generating 2D UIs to explain concepts, but you can see how even for them, the natural next step is if I'm asking about rockets or if I'm asking about dinosaurs, they should just play right then and there a visual of it that is tailored to my question, to my situation, to the memory that they have about me. And for that, you need something like Reactor that can run these kind of workloads at scale and allows you to put these pixels on screen as fast as possible in real time. And so I also think that besides step one was what I told you before. Step two is integration with these chatbots, because who doesn't learn with them today at this point, at least in the Western hemisphere? The next level is, I think, applications that themselves are tailored to children. It's a whole learning curriculum that is developed per student, includes visuals and audio in a way that wasn't possible before. Because today it wouldn't be impossible to create a GTA 6 in Rome. It's possible to do it. You would just need to hire a whole team, work for 6 years, and you would only do like one period of one specific historical period in Rome, and that's it. With this technology, you can make whatever version of that. I really think so. It's not about removing the work from the people that would have done that in the first place without this piece of tech. So it's really about the net new and like the unlocking that it adds. It's really like additive instead of subtractive or replacing something, I think. And so even in education, I would have loved to play GTA in Rome or something like that and learn about it, right? I mean, that would have been amazing. It would have been amazing. That's why I love Assassin's Creed, by the way. It's kind of a way of doing that, honestly.
I mean, the reason why we like these games, right, because you feel like you've got a bit of freedom with the game. You can travel around, you can go to different parts of the game and see different things. And I mean, this GTA 6 that is yet to come out, it's been going on for 5, 6, 7 years in development. It's nuts. It is. Alberto, let's get under the hood of the technology, because we're talking about all these amazing things that you're doing. As much as you can share, and at the time of this recording, I guess for the audience, how about you share with the audience where you are right now with the company, what stage you're at, and how much you can share in terms of, let's look under the hood. What is this technology? How does it sit? Where does it sit?
Yeah, no, I can share a lot at this point. First of all, we strongly believe that, like I said at the beginning, the future of AI is more and more visual instead of textual, at least as far as humans consume it, and more real time and interactive, meaning that humans don't have to wait for replies, they don't have to wait for feedback. It all happens live. So believing that implies a few things. You need to have actually an infrastructure that can run type of workloads at scale. And it just so happens that current infrastructure systems don't really support the kind of workloads that you need to enable for that to happen. So there is that, first of all. The other part is that I truly think that for what people call AGI, we have to move towards models and platforms that understand the physical world and can think in 3D and really understand what it means to move a chair or talk to a human, not just abstractly, but actually like concretely, so that they can be trusted with our environment as well as people around them. So for all of those reasons, we are building a platform that allows developers to build with the power of real-time video generation, aka world models. We do that because the technology is so powerful. We strongly believe that the best way to extract all the amazing advantages that world models have is to allow the huge amount of developers that we have today in the world to build with them. We philosophically, we could go and build applications ourselves, but our product really is an SDK and platform to build applications with the power of world models, which enables all the things we just discussed previously in the conversation. For example, you thought about education, you thought about, going to the movies. With this technology, you could sit down and build something like that yourself with what Reactor is building. Like, the idea is to empower you to go out and build these things. And especially with LLMs being a thing these days, there are so many, so to speak, developers in the world that there used to be. For us, also building an SDK was a way of allowing really anybody to build with this incredible power. We have built a whole system from the ground up that is geared exclusively towards world models and real-time video generation. Literally from the bare metal in the cloud up the stack, we have built everything ourselves. And that was the only way for us to achieve the level of performance and the level of quality that we strive for. Taking a step back 1 second, what we're building is that we allow world models to run at scale in the cloud globally, and for them to be used by users at very low latency with applications built on top of them by developers. So in order to do that, like I said, we had to really rethink a lot of things from scratch, because a lot of the cloud infrastructure has not been built for real-time interactive video applications, which are very bandwidth intensive and very latency sensitive. In that world, like I said, we had to go and build everything from scratch. And so we have a whole global fleet and system that allows us to offer the best in the class latency and reliability for running world models in real time. And we already have many developers and enterprises that are running on Reactor today as we speak. And being a little bit even more technical, we had to think about things like, okay, what is the technology that's available today in the browsers for video streaming versus robots, versus consoles, versus mobile phone? How do we target all of those applications and make sure that Reactor is a platform that can really support this wide variety of systems where the clients live? Because at the end of the day, we do a lot of our work in the cloud, but the developer experience and the UX is tremendously important to us. We really believe in a product that needs to be cohesive, such that, for example, one of the products that I admire the most is Vercel, because it is such a cohesive platform. It is so, as much as possible, well thought from all angles. And so we strive to be the same type of product for our customers. And that really means thinking across the stack from the bottom to the top, what you're doing, and sometimes re-implementing things from scratch, because you'd be surprised by how many things that you would think should work don't work in production, especially for world models and real-time video. From video streaming to inference to cloud infrastructure to cloud management, there's so many things that just don't work. And you would think that they should. And so we have to do a lot of work ourselves.
Alberto, I'm just thinking about this other concept, and I don't know if this has any relevance here, but this concept of creator economy and the ability to have various different types of technologies nowadays that allows you to create. We mentioned podcasting earlier on, YouTube. There's so many mediums now available where somebody sitting anywhere in their bedroom can start to create whatever they're passionate about. I could be completely off track here, but I'm just wondering, as you're describing the technology, I wonder if you're a 10 or 12 or 15 years old and you have this passion for something, whether it's gaming or a video or anything, any type of world where, as you said, it's the visual versus the text. Is this a place where Reactor plays in as well? The ability to give the common user, the person that, I mean, you mentioned directors are going to become programmers, somebody very random and doesn't have any understanding of how to write a line of code, doesn't have a computer science background, perhaps is in a completely different field, but has a passion for something and can visually see it in their head. You know what they say, right? A lot of ideas are first built in your head before they come to fruition. They're built twice. Is this a world where Reactor can be, I guess, a use case for people?
100%. I mean, that's why we have built, like I said, like an SDK for developers. When I say developers, I think the word still has a connotation of somebody who specialized in writing software. But really, LLMs have completely changed that. So we could have gone and built an application for non-technical people. We could have done that. Some people decide to do that so that you don't have to learn programming. Fair enough. For the kind of people you just said, say I'm a physicist or something and I have an idea for some movie script and I want to try it out with Reactor, for example. We could in theory say, well, this person doesn't know how to code. Let's build an application that substitutes code for, I don't know, building blocks that you drag and drop, whatever it is. However, LLMs have completely changed that. And so anybody can sit down and build a front end, an application of sorts, and throw together a web app, right? By just asking Claude or ChatGPT. In that world, it makes much more sense to build an SDK that empowers them to bring these ideas to fruition, to make them real, by removing the heavy lift related to how actually challenging it is to run world models at scale and make them available and build a whole ecosystem on top of that. But the person somewhere in the world who wants to do this, we absolutely are built for that person, because in fact, they don't even need to know programming, so to speak. All that they have to do is point their coding agent to the Reactor documentation, tell the agent, can you please build this kind of application with Reactor? And it works, by the way. We've done this multiple times with folks who aren't technical, so to speak. And they've built incredible things, by the way.
It makes me think, when we talk about the internet, when that came around, it was as if, why should I have my store on the internet? What people would like to go to the bank, a physical place where they could exchange and find out what their bank balance is. This idea of doing online banking on the internet, and then all of a sudden everybody is using online banking. In fact, more banks are closing and everything's going digital. And then mobile comes along, and then the cloud. And as we think about this technology that you're building and how AI is starting to drive all these new lines of ideas that one day will become mainstream. So I want to ask you this question. 10 years from now, when this is mainstream, I guess what will feel obvious in hindsight at that moment, what is it do you feel that people are not seeing today that maybe in 10 years time will feel very obvious? Where do you see this going in the next 10 years?
I am actually confident that it will become obvious in hindsight. What you see on screen shouldn't be pre-generated anymore. It should all be generated on the fly. I think that 10 years from now, there's a very high chance, something like I'm looking out my browser, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at UI, like that will be all generated on the fly, 60 hertz, maybe even 120 for me. Literally personalized for me, for how my brain works and how I like to interact with machines. So what's going to change is that the way that we interact with machines will become extremely fluid and adaptive per human, how every human thinks. Because right now, whenever you use an application, you are effectively having to teach yourself how another person thinks, how they think you should consume software and services and games and whatever. But we know as a fact, biologically speaking, we're all different and unique. Something like this will change effectively how we interact with machines forever, because the machines will present to us interfaces and experiences that are tailored to us, not in a dystopian way, by the way. Like I really don't, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I always use the example of my grandma. She struggles so much with WhatsApp. She's not stupid, like she's very smart, like all grandmas are. But it's the interface that doesn't adapt to what she wants to do. She just wants to send me a message. That's all she wants to do. She just wants to send me a photo and scroll through the photos. Why does she have to go through that pain? And the interface should just adapt to her instantaneously. And I think that's possible. And so all of these instances will vaporize, will go away. And actually, we'll have systems that finally adapt to us instead of us having to adapt to them. And I think that will unlock enormous economical benefits because there are so many hours wasted on figuring out how the UI of a certain application works and how to do a certain thing on some application. Because right now, everybody lives on software. We're never going to go away from using software, right? So that's a guaranteed thing that's going to stay around. We shouldn't have to spend so many hours and so much effort and so much economical output on applications that don't adapt to us. Like there are literally billions of dollars wasted, I think, every year on misuse of UIs and people that don't. So, and this is just talking about like business applications. If you think about like media and entertainment, I mean, the sky is the limit there. So I think what will become obvious in hindsight is that generating pixels on the fly is not, it's a worthwhile expense to do in terms of energy consumption and in terms of where to go with technology. Generating pixels, audio, even text, all on the fly per session, per user will become something that we don't think about. And today, if you told somebody that you should do this, they'll call you crazy. They'll be like, oh, but look at the data centers, like they're so power hungry. This is like telling people in the 70s and 60s, like, personal computers, look at the mainframes. What are you talking about? We all know what happened, right? So I think, if anything, this will happen even faster than what happened in the previous cycles because of artificial intelligence. And so I think we can have a high degree of confidence that definitely a significant part of visual content consumed by humans will be all generated on the fly in 10 years. Maybe a lot, but definitely a significant part. And probably audio and other types of medium as well, I imagine.
That's really exciting, Alberto. I think we are living in history right now. We're going through this incredible wave, right? Things are moving so fast. Valuations of companies, you're hearing more success stories. I think the ability now to create, the ability to build has really transformed our way of life. And a lot of what I hear from a lot of the guests that I have on the show, who are all either founders or investors, it's as if we're becoming one with technology. It's beginning to learn us and we learn it. And the word that keeps, I guess, in my mind is productivity. There's so much wisdom there, but it's the UI and my mum as well. She used to use her iPhone. She passed away last year. She used to use her iPhone and she knew how to use a lot of the apps, but some she didn't quite understand how to use them. And it wasn't so much that, it was just complicated. Alberto, taking you away from the world of Reactor for a moment, you know, you are building this incredible piece of technology and a company and a startup. And I just want to finish off with one final question. And it's one that we like to ask every single guest that we have on the show. And the question is around, it's about books. And I always like, it's my favorite part of the episode because I'm a book lover and I love to read all the time. And I'm always curious when I speak to my guest, what books they read. So is there a book that you can recommend for us? One that has been, I guess, in many ways, the most impactful on your professional career or life?
I was thinking about this and I think that it's a tough choice, but I would say that, let's say that the one that comes to mind in terms of wow, like I would reread this a million times, is called Endurance by Alfred Lansing. It is about this Shackleton's expedition to Antarctica and how, like, basically, I don't want to spoil the book, but it talks about the ship is called Endurance for a good reason. They have to really endure insane things to survive down there. It really painted a picture to me of like, wow, like if these people, like this is not a made up story, like these people actually went through that. And so it made me think of like all the things that I face in life and the challenges in business that I face. I'll be fine. You know, like it really gave me a bit of solace in terms of like when I face challenges and, you know, there are problems that I'm like, they're nothing compared to what those people had to go through. Everybody lives through problems differently, but really reading that book is incredible because it's a true story of how these men figured out to survive in one of the direst possible situations and actually lived to tell the story. It reads almost like a novel, like a fictional novel, how crazy it is. And so I really, really recommend that book. I think it makes you really have appreciation for how in past generations, especially, like people went through incredible challenges and incredible problems and prevailed. And I think it's more inspiring to me often than a story like that, than like a successful entrepreneur. Successful entrepreneurs are amazing, but at the end of the day, they're not stuck in Antarctica trying to survive with like
Yeah.
seal blubber or whatever. Yeah, it's a very inspiring book. I highly recommend it. It's a crazy story. When I'm faced with some challenge, I was like, Shackleton like almost died in Antarctica eating blubber seal. It's like, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I can do this. So I think it's a great book.
You're right. I think it's interesting that you recommended this book. You're right. We go through life not realizing how other people have had it much harder. Our ancestors, the generations before us. I mean, one of the most amazing things about this technology is that it's making our life easier. I believe that AI is going to have a profound impact on healthcare and how we think about our health. I mean, look, I wear this whoop and imagine 30 years ago or 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, this technology didn't exist. But now I wake up, I can say, okay, I didn't sleep well. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's just interesting. And Alberto, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show on Inside. Of course, it's really interesting to learn what you're building. And, you and I have been working together for some time, and I'm just really fascinated by this space. I know it's not just about movies and games, but movies being an area that I'm quite passionate about, I can see how this is going to have a profound impact. Alberto, it was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. And yeah, I'll just also say that it's been a pleasure working with you guys as well, and continuing to do so very happy about that. And no, thank you for having me. This has been fun. Great to chat for sure. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. This podcast is powered by Harrison Clark. For more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. As always, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind.